Hello and welcome to the Genius Move Audio Academy podcast. My name is Paul Brewer. In today's episode we have session bass player James Blennerhassett, known by all as the Blen. When I asked the Blen to pop over, I expected a fair old chat, but I wasn't prepared for the 5 odd hours of recording we got. Those recordings will make a fine set of podcasts telling his fascinating tale from the first gigging roast as a 14-year-old to the current touring commitments with Derek Ryan and all in between. Believe me when I say it's a belter of a story. We started off slightly more focused and concentrated on the recording of the bass. I expected Blen to bring loads of basses when he told me he had his rig in the car. That wasn't really the case, as we should discover. After setting it all up at Genius Move Studio, we just started chatting.
The way things have gone really with gear now is that everything is on in-ears nowadays. There's very little backline.
Right.
And I mean, currently with Derek Ryan, there's no backline at all. So if you want to create a sound and not be at the mercy of a sound man, you have to buy yourself a floor box or a preamp that you can set up the sound that you want to hear, both in your ears and out front. So I mean, normally I use this Zoom B6, which is Zoom's latest bass thing, designed in conjunction with some of the top jazz geezers like Chick Corea's, I can't remember his name, and Patitucci and these boys.
Is that acknowledging the fact that backline isn't part of the show anymore?
Yeah, it really is. It's giving people an opportunity.
They're proper switches on it as well.
Oh yeah, proper switches. I mean, there's 4 modelled DIs out of it. One of them, the one I'm using is a Demeter model, which is a tube. There's 2 solid states, 2 tubes. There's a load of amps in there. If you want to go down particularly for the proggy guys, there's loads of overdriven SVTs and Glockenklangs and all sorts of things. There's loads of esoteric stuff as Mark bass, modelled Mark bass. I don't personally use the preamp in it anymore. I just use the effects, and I take then the DI is fat enough without having to. And if your instrument is good, if you give it out, what you get out of your instrument shouldn't need to EQ. They say the best EQ is the one where you just dip stuff rather than push them. If it's a problem, take it out. You might have to obviously push stuff for certain effects and stuff, but so I go with the thing that the bass should be good enough to sound flat on its own. I mean, that bass is flat there. There's nothing wrong with that sound.
Right.
I mean, that's
let's just go back a step and let's talk about the instrument first.
Okay.
I mean, from my point of view, it's not a particularly gorgeous one.
No, it's not. It's ugly. Well, the other choice was blue, and I didn't like the idea of the blue one because it had Nordstrand pickups on it, which are very high output for metal-y type. Yeah, I like the Bartolini's. They're a bit more old-fashioned sounding, and I run the bass passive anyway. There's a very good active circuit in it, with sweepable mids and all that stuff. But to me, that just makes, unless you have a problem, again, you want to get rid of, I don't ever use it. So by the blend control, you should be able to get any sound you want out of the instrument.
I notice it has 5 strings as well.
They do. Low B, essential in modern music, because you're competing with synths a lot of the time. It also makes your life easier. Any music, really. I mean, I do have quite a few 4-string basses. But for instance, now, if you're playing in the key of E flat, which a lot of jazz stuff is in E flat, if you're a normal bass,
yes, indeed. That's your lowest note.
You don't have an E flat, you have an E. Where on this, you've got your E flat, key of D.
Right.
So, I mean, you've got 2 octaves at your fingertips there, without really changing, only shifting once.
Right, okay.
C, the same.
Is the 5-string electric your instrument now?
Yeah, it would be.
How long's that been going on then?
It's been going on since I first met Artie McGlynn. I had a Yamaha, I still have it, a TRB6.
Yes, indeed.
The first neck through 6 strings.
Yeah.
That John Patitucci plays famously. And that was on loads and loads of records. And it was Artie encouraged me to go down that route, because to get the low things, the low notes.
Right, okay.
And there was one particular tune of his on the Causeway album, and the bass had to do, it just went boom, boom, boom. And I needed the low string for that. And detuning only works to a certain extent. You can detune one step down to a D or something, your E string. But if you want to get down to the really low stuff, they just sound flappy.
Yes.
Yeah,
indeed.
once you take the tension off the string. And that's the reason for fan frets, because they give you an extra scale length on the bottom and they shorten it at the top so you get an equal temper. But it means that your bottom strings are tight.
So, could you argue that the strings are similarly stretched and, it's fitting into it's focusing?
Yeah, they say that they give it a similar tension across all the strings by using fan frets. I mean, Novak fan frets. It's tried and tested. It works. And you can really hear, again, if you listen to more metal-based bands or prog, that really comes out in that, where they're digging in with plectrums and stuff, and they want that, all that low stuff going on. But I mean, in any music, the low string's a great thing to have. Even if you're doing a ballad, like, and you just want to finish on a low E flat or something. I mean, it's pure. And it's so much nicer than going back to,
Right, okay. So it's more of a natural.
It is, yeah. It also allows you to play more horizontally across the instrument. So, because the sound changes as you go up the neck. So, I mean, if you play in a B flat, for instance, on your now you play B flat up here, how much fatter it is than here, which is so. But again, sometimes you want that sound. Sometimes you want the fatter stuff. If you're doing, sometimes the B flats just sound nicer in the middle.
So really, our idea of what a bass is over the years has been kind of wrong insofar as that's too many compromises made to fit it into an instrument that.
Yeah, to get it so short an instrument. I think there has been enough. And Fender tried it years ago. They made a bass 6, remember, years ago? But it was more a baritone guitar.
Absolutely, yeah.
The reason for the 5-string for me is that it just allows me more of a facility, particularly recording, and where you have to be so precise.
Yes.
And you can't be sloppy in recording. You can't be buzzing and farting all over the place.
So the strings will all respond the same as well?
They do, yeah.
Right, okay.
It means when you play back a track, you need very little compression, if any, particularly with the dingwalls. They're so... In fact, I'll put one of those on. I'll just mute that a sec. These are created by a guy called Sheldon Dingwall in Canada. And there's an extremely long waiting list if you want to buy one of them. They're very light. This one particularly is light. Swamp ash body.
Is it a coincidental that it's kind of the same shape as that one?
It's it's prettier, I think, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, is the Ibanez based on a... The
Ibanez is shorter in scale.
Is it based on the overall shape?
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah, it's pretty... But the Ibanez is shorter as...
And lighter as well.
Yeah, lighter. It's 2 inches shorter. The difference in these, I suppose, that they're beautifully made, and the Leyland Sklar has his own signature model of these.
I should mention that James is tuning now. So
I'm tuning now. No, I'm not.
No, he's not.
So this is a passive instrument as well. I like the sound of passive instruments. I just like that organic, that old. I'm not a slapper. So I don't really do any of that stuff. So it's I don't want that sound. I want an old sound. I mean, that just sounds like a lovely precision. To me,
So is that in this particular instance, is this a perfected precision?
I think so. They wind one of the pickups like a P bass. They actually do a P bass of their own, a replica, which is slightly shorter than this. And I'm thinking of getting one of them. And they're passive and they just sound amazing. Their sound, and it just sounds like a really, really good P bass.
That's interesting now, yeah.
Yeah, I know the diehards will always say, "Oh, you can't beat the '60s bass or whatever."
Yeah,
I don't agree with that. I think basses have progressed.
Yeah,
timbres have progressed.
Absolutely, and also recording has progressed.
Exactly.
I discovered one record there that came on, and it went down to 25 hertz.
Wow.
Recorded version.
Really?
Yeah, and that was just on,
I know. I don't know what this bass goes down to. 30 hertz, I suppose the B is, isn't it? Probably about 30.
Yeah, I think it's 31 actually. But
yeah. But it's very. You can hear that. That B note is clear. There's no.
as clear as the E and A.
Yeah, it tells you.
That's interesting now, because this is all...
And they're perfectly balanced.
Yeah.
Across all the volume is the same. Across all the strings. And that's the fan fets, I believe.
This was me thinking that it was just all you guys pouncing around with posing with these electric basses, but there actually is reason.
Well, there is. There's not too many fellas using these. They're all scared of them in the country scene. Anyway, they're looking at you going like, but it actually makes sense. And I keep saying, let's just try one, because you will actually never go back to a regular bass if you play one of these things.
And do Fender make?
No.
Okay.
They don't. There's not that many of them. Some of the exotic European basses makers, like Marsuzic, make them and stuff. Dingwall would be the best known in multi-scale basses. And Ibanez Bass Workshop, they're very fond of them as well. Got a good players playing them. But
that's really interesting now in terms of that every bass note you will play will be the same.
Yeah. So it means that when you go and you're going to stick your compression across the track, you find, I actually don't need this, or very little of. You find a little bit of parallel compression maybe just, but you'd find that you're not losing your bottom string anymore. It's not getting lost in the mud, especially when you put it next to a kick drum and stuff. You find there's very rarely an issue with these basses when you have a kick drum in the same sound space. They'll sit together much better. I find I'm not shuffling the EQ around as much, trying to make space for the bass on, with the kick drum.
It works similar to how a sample would work.
Yeah, it does.
Within a track, yeah. That's interesting now, yeah.
So it doesn't then, and it's just, somebody made a very interesting comment the other day. We were doing a jazz gig in Belfast with an organ quintet, and this guy who was running the gig, who's a really accomplished piano and organ player, Scott Flanagan, came up to me and says the electric bass was the perfect choice for this gig because it doesn't get lost in the bottom end of the organ.
Of course, yes.
Because the sound is much more focused.
Yes, indeed.
Whereas if I was playing an upright bass,
clearer.
Yeah, if I was playing an upright bass, he says you'd lose a lot of the detail because the upright bass, the sound blooms in it. Oh,
yes, indeed.
Whereas this is,
the room.
I mean, there's no hiding that. And he said it was the right choice because you could really hear everything. You could hear all the detail that you might have been struggling to hear otherwise.
And how big a place was this?
Probably hold maybe 100, 150 maybe max.
Right. So to my mind, that says a relatively small space.
Yeah.
That the double bass will actually react with because of the measurements.
Yes. Yeah.
It maybe have a frequency at around 100 hertz where it's just boosted in the room.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's not the case with this then.
No, it's not really. I've never really heard any. There's the occasional play dance hall. And where you get rogue notes, like the Allingham and Bundoran is classic. It's A flat, always an A flat.
Right.
Always that note.
And is it just?
It's just the room.
Right.
And
is it the width or
I don't know.
It's usually the
height.
Yes.
It's a very low ceiling.
Right, there you have it.
A long room with a very low ceiling.
The first thing I used to do when we were setting up the PA for our pub band was that I'd find there's the note. And I just notch it in the overall PA, so it wasn't contributing that note.
Well, that's what Gareth has to do. He has to notch. He knows there to notch that. And there's another room we do, which is an F sharp, is like appalling. It's just seriously appalling, and you just have to notch it out. But then in the next night, you wouldn't know there'd be nothing,
Yeah.
So so you have to have that knowledge. That I can shout down and I'll tell him exactly what note is given Jip, And especially when you're playing with a piano who's doing left hand up and down, in country music, that's where it can really become a problem, compounding the issue.
Yeah.
So it's important. And that's, again, like they always said, that these basses, they cut through much better.
The more I'm understanding of it, the more I can see why.
Yeah, they do. It's a bit of a stretch now, but, you get used to it.
You just have the two basses with you today, is that
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Now, I was expecting, but I thought you might bring a couple of Fenders.
Yeah. No.
A Mustang, or not a Mustang,
P-bass or a jazz bass.
Yeah, well, what's the one, the active one? Music Man.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking, he'll turn up with all these and have them all ready for recording.
No.
But really?
I've kind of abandoned all those now.
Yeah, but can you essentially do that?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Because if I switch this, that takes the like a Music Man. And I don't know whether it's series or parallel, I can't remember. But it does gives you that. Which is very Music Man. They can do the complete P bass on that pickup alone. You know, and it's, or you can do the J bass for the you know, it gives you that whole J bass back pickup thing, you know. You know, it's amazing. It's passive. Like there's no electronics in it.
That is amazing.
It's just cleverly pickups are cleverly wound, I'd say.
So in terms of you performing when you're recording, it's basically the one instrument for a start.
Yeah.
And do you just sort of tune it to the track? Is that?
Yeah, I do. Well, I mean,
depending on what's required. Like.
Yeah, depending on what's required. If you're doing country stuff, it'll be the J bass.
Right.
Like, you know, and that cuts through. That sits very nicely in a track. If I'm doing anything that's funky, I'll use the Music Man type setting, you know, so it'll be it'll MIDI and really long. And then if I'm doing anything like real extreme stuff, I'd be probably on the back pickup, you know, with all the treble, most of the treble wound off. You've got, you know, it's all there.
Right.
You know?
So I was thinking this chat we were going to have would take us an hour to cover everything, but everything is kind of covered.
It's kind of covered on this, you know. I mean, you've got a thing here. I mean, if I'm doing a lot of the time with the Derrick thing, I'll use, I mean, which is an 80s thing. But it's just bloody great on that when he's rocking out, like if I'm doing you know, I mean, yeah, you can kick in a dark glass overdrive. You know, you don't hear the overdrive in the front, but you know it's pushing, and it's louder than the regular bass. But when you kick those buttons in, the bloody bass just it catapults.
Right.
The catapults the track into another space without getting lost. I mean, I have the real dark glass preamps, you know. But that's just a modelled one, like. And
how close do you think it is, or?
Oh, it's damn good, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, the biggest letdown is the octave.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I have the Boss OC2s, you know, which are still the best octave pedals.
Right.
Because they don't go too quick on you. Yeah. This now you have to be very precise and short. Here, there.
Oh, yes, indeed, yeah.
Yeah, once it starts getting long.
Oh, right, okay.
You can't be long with it. But it's good if you're just doing... You know, it works perfectly for that sort of stuff.
What did you say the bass amp is again?
Oh, that's a Phil Jones.
Phil Jones. So that is essentially just being used as a monitor then, is it?
Yeah, that's a 300 watt power amp and 6 5-inch speakers. And it's just a monitor. That's all. And I just like the sound of them. I have another part of that which I would use for double bass, which is smaller, and it's got 2 speakers pointing out front, 2 pointing straight up. So you can hear what you're doing.
Ah, right. So it's
a great idea. Like.
It's kind of an amp and a monitor built in.
Yeah, it is really.
Yeah.
But I tend to use this on its own most of the time.
And that's just really for stage monitoring.
Yeah. I mean, I have a big SWR 212 that you couldn't lift. Need 2 fellas to lift it.
Yeah.
I have another 210 that you'd break your back lifting it. Yeah. I have an Ampeg SVT 8x10 and a accompanying head sitting in my mother's garage at home.
Where it will
which will never be used again.
Right, okay.
You need a crew, 2 fellas just to lift the head. And it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't sound better.
No, it doesn't sound better. It sounds great and it looks incredible. Yeah. But I mean, who's going to lift it?
Yeah.
You know, not me. This has to all go into a Honda Civic.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm happy with that. And even stuff like if I have to do some of his even starts of slow stuff with what am I, you know, you know, I can do that little melodic stuff in some of his slower songs where I have to feature.
And do you play fretless at all these days?
Don't need to. I can do it. Let's see where oh yeah, this one there. It's passable. You know, it's possible. It'll never be as good as a real fretless. But sure, who's going to pay it? Who's going to... Yeah, and then I sell it, and then the next day I get a phone call. Have you got a fretless bass?
All right, okay.
No. Why didn't you ring me last week?
Yeah.
So that's why I've never kept a fretless, because I can do an awful lot of that stuff on a Yamaha upright, with the sound.
Oh yes, your performance.
Yeah, so I can do that. But most of the time, people don't really want a fretless. They think they want a fretless
until they hear it.
Yeah, but then if you can give them the sound off that with just a little bit of a delay and stuff, it usually covers what they really want. I'd borrow one if I needed it.
Bass technology has advanced significantly.
Oh, it has, yeah.
I didn't even know all this stuff existed. I was aware that lads had shiny basses. And I've pointed in different directions. And Zoom and other...
Well, that's quite cheap, the Zoom, it's cutting out about 400 quid. You can buy a quad...
And that's probably for the switches.
Yeah, you could probably buy a quad Cortex, it'll cost you $2,000.
Okay, and what's the difference?
The quad Cortex is the all singing and dancing modelled, the latest thing from Neural. I think it's from the Dark Glass crowd, and or you can buy a Kemper, or the Line 6 Helix.
Oh yes,
they're all credible alternative. They're much more expensive. They don't have enough bass things in them for my liking.
Right,
they're really a guitar thing that they've chucked a couple of bass amps into.
Right, okay.
Whereas this was designed specifically for bass. By bass players who asked for particular things, and they're all as I say, they've all the Aguilars and Mark basses. They're all modelled in there if you want them.
So, like you've surprised me with how little you've turned up with today in terms of a session musician, which you are.
Yeah,
you would expect a broader range of things.
No.
But you now have a broader range of things within the one instrument.
Yeah, or two. I usually bring two basses. I'd probably usually bring if they're asking if it's an electric session, I would bring this, and I'd bring an old Fender, because some people won't believe that this could be better. I know, right. I want the real thing.
Was it to convince them that is?
Yeah, but then usually if you say nothing and just play this, they're happy. Right. But you bring the Fender anyway and say, hey, look, got a P-bass, and they'll. But at the end of the day, I usually end up playing this and say nothing, unless they insist, and then I'll play the Fender for them. But I wouldn't push it.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Because I know this is going to sound better on the track anyway.
Yeah, but you let somebody else make that decision.
They can make that decision if they want to, and I think that's fair enough. Some people just like the kudos of having the original there on it. It looks good. I mean, I know guys like Jason Duffy or Keith likes to play old precisions with flat band strings, and as does Pino Palladino. They just love them, and that's great. That's their buzz, and they can do it. This is what I do, and I don't want to push it on anybody else. I'll just do it because I like them.
So that's James's way to do it. Many thanks to James for lugging in all his gear and the chatting. Do visit geniusmove.ie to find out about recording courses to suit you. Thanks for listening.